Kojo show so.
Kojo Yankson, our Yedman with Joy FM Super Morning Show host. So Akufo Addo is the West President of Ghana and the Fourth Republic. And then there's a Joy. Review. Na kwam sefa kan beba panel no so wantimi ama. It is Samson Ladi and by do review on the Samson Ladi classic kakra on the conversations about to cry yet to them from Fasobi and and why would Kojo Yankson say that? He's my colleague. And some of the points he raised, when him someone for be doing at them, but yeah, somehow can he Fatun Seniani, President Akufo Addo last week, not last week, about 2 months ago, admitted some of the things publicly. Then Kojo Yankson, why is he saying that President Akufo Addo is the West President in his view in the Fourth Republican dispensation? I have a lot to say about that particular comment. I have a lot to say. Anybody discuss on the critical analysis. Special, so subscribe. Most subscribe click bell notification. In the video, you will certainly have a comment. Feel free, leave your comments in the comment section. Let's keep it decross. Saturday on the critical analysis channel, but that's almost deeper. I think the last time I checked, more than 5,000 or I think almost 8,000 or so. Me refer that figure no. And Ashe, thank you so much. Now no na Joe ye been do Kojo Yankson. No busansa by election violence near there. On the something lady in the host of news are classic akra. Not TC President Akufo Addo abide him. In somebody okay be TV.
I think that we believe that elections are a very high stakes activity in Ghana. Make or break, win or lose.
Yeah.
Because whomever takes the trophy, whomever wins the election, wins everything. But it's a mirage. Because since the dawn of the Fourth Republic, no election has changed Ghana. No party has come into government and transformed the country.
It's not a debate.
Your life doesn't change based on who wins the election. Nothing fundamental about who you are, what you aspire for, what you are capable of, changes because of who wins the election. But we are yet to see that.
But there's some evidence to support what he's saying.
Yeah.
Because if you look at just statistically, so we had Akufo. So let's go to 2020 was when we changed government for the first time. At the time, there was high expectations. Akufo then did quite well. It took us to HIPIC. And then sort of reverse a lot of the debt, and we sort of went back to the international market. But if you go to 2010, when we began to produce commercial oil, to 2012, every government since then had sort of, it wasn't even a race to the bottom. So in 2015, we had gone to the IMF because people forget at the time, the city had collapsed against the currency. So they went for policy credibility, if you remember. In 2015, we did the Senchi thing, and then, that. And then at the back of that, and one of the things that we noticed, just analyzing it, was each time we had gone to the IMF in an election year, the incumbent government that went to the IMF loses the election and lost elections significantly. So in 2016, the NDC lost elections. And you think that the party that took over will do better because they've learned a lesson. 2016's margin of defeat was so significant. The margin of victory was huge for Akufo Addo. What happened? They did worse than the government before them. We thought then was the worst rock bottom we've hit. But 2020, 2023, 2022, 2024 beats that. I mean, Akufo Addo managed to somehow outdo the chaos and the rock bottom of 2016. So it backs your point. And of course, we now delivered another one now. The question is whether they would reverse.
But Kojo, then how does that then introduce violence each time there's an election?
History tells us that elections don't change our lives.
I'm just making that point just to support the point that it hasn't changed. It sort of get worse, at least over the last 16 years.
But we think they do, right? That's the mirage. We think the elections change our lives. They don't. The only thing that changes is who has access to stealing. That's what changes, right? The people who rob us change. That's it. Right? So, in essence, because we think everything rides on the election, while nothing actually rides on it, we are able to muster emotion to the level of violence, believing that we have to affect the outcome of the election by hook or crook. not realizing that if we stay at home and let things take their course, our lives will remain pretty much the same. So with every by-election, we decide that everything rides on it, because this is what will tell us what the nation thinks of us. This is what will tell us whether the choice we made in the election recently was the right one or the wrong one. This is what will validate what we've just come through. So let's throw everything at it. These by-elections were inconsequential. It would have made no difference who won or lost. We would still have had a mega majority or whatever you want to call them. We would still have had a paltry minority or whatever you want to call them. Nothing would have changed fundamentally from the results of these two by-elections. But in our minds, everything rides on it.
Sorry, but Kojo, there's some very good justification for the point you are making, however controversial it is. But we also have to acknowledge, he's saying what he's saying, and there's every good reason for it because of the bad leadership we have had over the period. And we have seen our peers, the countries that we gain independence with, we can only always reference them to show how badly we have managed ourselves. Okay? So we will reference Malaysia and the rest of them, and we are nowhere close.
I thought that was quite far. Malaysia.
Correct.
Yeah.
So for that reason, you are correct. When I see all the broken roads and the schools under trees that we are never, ending, that's a good point you raise. But elections are important. Because look, we went broke as a country, completely broke. We're getting to a point like some other country where fuel had to be rationed for essential workers, right? You have an election that has somewhat changed that circumstance. We've had the CD at least managed to be stable for a while. We don't know if that stability is organic. We can debate that. But look at how things were being run. Look at the nature of inflation.
If you don't mind,
okay? The way inflation was running up.
Is it on the CPO?
To some extent,
no, let me just,
elections do matter. And I believe that we have leaders who think beyond the thievery and what they can get personally. So we have John Mahama, and we're thinking about a legacy term, and he clearly knows the burden of the expectations on him, the constitutional changes that are expected.
Kojo, do you see the point he's advancing?
They will change the architecture of this country forever.
If I had continued, I would have come to that point. Anyway.
It's fine.
Because it is true.
Okay.
Right? And I would have come to that. I was starting from this basis because I needed to remove the mirage. Before I then go and talk about the real differences between the government we just experienced and the one we are experiencing now. Because there are differences. There are differences. They may not be life-changing, but there are differences, and they are important. All right? First of all, it would not have been difficult for anyone to have been better than the last government we just had. Not have been difficult. Because I agree, that is the worst president we've had in the Fourth Republic. Someone who dipped his hands into people's nest eggs, people's savings, people's investments, people's pensions to fund his government. That's the lowest of the low. It doesn't get worse than that. Someone who stood on platforms and defended Galamsey, said, they are not doing it as we speak. So let them be.
So it brings the point back to the fact that...
Is it difficult to do better than that?
Which will mean that we've got to wear the mirage back then.
No, the mirage exists. It's always there.
Okay.
And it comes out during elections, right? I was trying to answer your question about why there's always violence. But there are differences between the performance of governments. There are differences. The point is that it is not difficult to follow a government as bad as the one we just had. It's not difficult. In fact, that's the reason why I didn't think John Mahama needed a honeymoon at all. He'd been president before. He'd done it for 4 years. He wasn't new to the job. He had 8 years to lay his plans of how to come and do better. So for me, his accountability should have begun from day one. No honeymoon. But he came along and actually fulfilled some of the promises he made. That makes a pleasant change.
He actually was greeted with a crisis, with the energy crisis that it made.
From day one.
Yeah.
From day one, the lights were going to go off.
Yeah.
He fixed it. Good for him. The lights have stayed on all year, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations to him for that. And you see, these things ought to be normal. These ought not be the things that we praise, right?
Right. Right.
But after what we've just been through, it becomes like superhuman achievements.
Yes. President Akufo Addo na admit, I think Belgium was say DDEP was his darkest hour. And for me, they be analyze President Akufo Addo aban and make can so town Kojo in America. Health or idea. Me nkwachiri me ade bi am da shanti example. Call me any debate any day, I'll debate it. Be kwai a champion time obewie NMSI kumawu fomena obewie konongo obewie ye. Se wi amu ye bo mentimi an bia fere na ka awuram. Bo ye became no sort of residue baby mo tun for crab and abas na ka. But owie about 6 health facilities are minimum shanti wi mabobodin konongo fomena kumawu na ba ko trouble so ba ko yam some be kwai 120 bed nice hospital many sector education free SHS 1.2 million kora ko school ni ade education is the greatest attribute in Bibia by economy there. And you see when Kojo was listening, I know Kojo because he's a colleague. Oshana, it's always what I talk about. In about can free ata na me post video bi amu bi amaba channels mo nche there. Omo matching bit ma be can you see actually. I don't want to go into those issues. People lost their lives. Maybe me editorial be me boy echikwam multimedia ni o COO. Abobra just Google who echikwam is. Na so be TV so be patrol say ni sika ko pension yempe kakrama ni nidi. Ni nkofodua. Unum nkofodua obi enu oti nkofodua nim Kama group of companies Dr. Michael Addo. Google Kama pension. For me, I want you to go and do a desktop research. Na Google so far Akufo pension. Na Google papa be a friend of Dr. Ananientwi. Sec. Men who had led lives. And you see, the caveat there the show President Mahama there no. I want to say me Akufo then the atwam. And that's a key President Mahama must take. Never must you allow one appointee to hold the government to ransom. Papa first year there, my catcher ben be afraid for public the data will be a there. A question almost 37 18 and for other mine or ban. Finance from. Not one single minister must be allowed to hold everybody to ransom. And Obia Kasa can do for yata. Say time money can be no say ya boy tapa pano. Co position there. It's papa. Finance from no mube guwa by na ma. Kwechire no mube pesika, mube padan. Mube tubi to be peske guo. Finance from. Emote na to shi interview no koya no yere pa no. Onke no friata. Okay. The finance from. And Kojo Yankson is right. They say amajo mama e God. O kana sem ketu be ndu for betu ogu so. Hanso na esa ye pese kasa na ye kasa so no obegu so ne say we ene ye ya year review ina na atra we do kasa 2025 enye as all be bronsam as a wo politics no wo de ende me na menka no wo de for stomach direction generally about 6.5 over 10. Kalam say na security sene dey analysis no. And the strike in crazy kasem 11 months ni teacher for any ade. Generally economy and na kura me be see the about 10 point something. And then my colleague be a transaction with public bank. Otono 10.6. Ya u push me send the evidence amount. Maybe been posting me am a transaction wa. Enti but a ni asem. No. Enti papa finance from code of conduct no mo ya twa maso. Me so mo ne begu aban no. Omo ne nkrophobia me from fanfulless no. Omo ne gu aban. Ena de omo kwachira obi aka no for yata aye convenient. No kra de ba na mo aban nim de na mo ka kire papa no. Be esuro, obi ebo ni obedi ho ban. Na de bia meka ni obedie enti no. That's why sometimes when I read certain comment, me team near say munyamento posterity. 20 last year, na me show me feel memory say me no masre. Man for pensions. In go from me wodi, me say echikwam. Na ma din for echikwam na mo timi. Odugugu no hu ni profile man adwuma wa ye, bra wa bo. Dr. Michael Addo, Kama Group of Companies. Madam Gloria Akufo. Yewra anane yantwi. Bo. We muni at least prominent. Never must our economy get to that level again. The papa, mwani na ho. Amam for be frame MPP, be frame NDC, family home. No crane dear, ye beka. And the truth is that first year be a year into 6.57 enjoy. Ekweni muno, best start your sakara. Me you'll be here. But one aso the code of conduct in the yadjuma. A war and I said, Papa, we hear strong advices, ebe kano krachero. So your legacy. First year, why you see first time I buy. You see Dodo na no nkrofo na kofa brel. Rolanda Gambia ofrin fa na buy. Hope City na ya ready ofrin fa na buy Rolanda Gambia. Papa, omo hwede bi omunim. Me say na me mo videos. Unim asema me ken. Those you trusted. Unim nyomo ye o. First term. Second term we umu signal ni be financing from Ghana for best support. You have the goodwill. I won't even use global and finalist goodwill. Me personal experience. And then me go talk calipo. And then maybe. Some snacks kakrebi. The mentors near there. Me de bia. Cause of me truth. I'm a crime minimum. Don't tom near there. That's what it is. That's it. Me accident 3rd January 2024. 4 days to a water tank. I don't know what I'm saying. 1,002 say. Now the coolant gum na the other year. Kotoye. What's 1,000? Nti me reality no kasa o de nya ya me debate u. Kojo Yankson so reality no. Na wo hwesa ne o kasa na he felt it. Me won krofo mu twiri sika. Na sometimes Ghana no kasa. Ane bisuro. Hey young boy we na always kebi nti muntimi nkasa. Ka one day me biem mamanfo akane mu omukom 2021 2022 me papa count data bank the biba mark to market value interest as ke da ho abe 7 year interest a wenya sika botan nso a na ye problem 1% no mu nyina de kwen foriata papa that should not repeat itself. Ghanaians trust you enko say ya useless expenditure and so mo best start ye kwa da bi e best start World Cup Brazil esiwa breso ense na Kojo Yankson kana hu hia hanem adi bi da you are in fact the Fourth Republic you are the most experienced. Nobody has prepared than you. Ebiane President Akufo because so your minister your trenches ni ma but you've prepared. President Akufo will invite you vice president. So Papa, don't give them the window like that. Be hard on them. One day, President Akufo be interviewed. I have no scintilla of doubt. Send your money be or because I had it. In some sectors, and McCann repeatedly, he did splendid. The economy, which is the fulcrum, the engine. I can't engine ma 80 bed also. Engine ma and that is the fulcrum. In any single economic decision, think about the people. At Tampa Pay Betray catcher said there will be no haircut. Now what you mean no crap, ma? You're telling na sakula. Krumuha. Maybe in CBO, Papa. And they be a mekase, Yamemwa, Kogan and the year. MPP Nino here, petrol station where Yan Caso no MPP Ninti, the 50 cities and 100 city back home. You never turn a pet. And you don't need to be NDC or MPP to see good governance. You just need to be a right-thinking Ghanaian who is fair-minded. enya ye begina haka. And I'm ready to debate anybody on the Nyama me say any security galam say. Me the Muntakana press release statement data beba. And then that's my poster the tallest. And you know, first year, ya applaud. Papa, manage second and third man. No man economy no, any here. Ye bibia be ye. Bibia ebe ye. And watch your ministers. Minim ni America. Minim ni America. Baby am ye adwuma no, menya information. Minim ni America, watch them. Some of your CEOs watch them. Na who so be a twiaba no. Na channel. So no one so no kwa national service no. Nza yedi. Sa. Cyber security boss for military di na chi atia no. Nza yedi. How many ministers on the military di o machi? Aha. What's your woman? Aha no, won say den yiska. Obi behave. E no starting so anu atia wo. Ni America. We only hope that we won't come back here and say I said it. I never come with you. Some kind. It be na too late about mine. And the thing about national governance is that mistake back on the ramifications of that mistake. No man for be you don't know what DD paid to homes. Mubinim. Now make us say sometimes find protocol any certain information my own can't be. But mama would info. Go and check those things out. Check for the videos yourself. Reflect on it overnight. Now, whatever conclusion you come to after watching this video, I leave it with your conscience. Leave your comments in the comment section. Share the comment there crossly. Who did that time? Team new one, they better delete it. And there, we are not subscribed. I'm not subscribed. Now click the bell notification. The video be to my bonus my ship. Send it to me. I'm coming here. Then I'll see you. Bye bye.